pizzas, pastas, sandwiches, and a lot of other dishes need prosciutto to be complete. This is an Italian type of ham that is made from hind legs of pigs and is aged during a dry curing process. La Casa del Prosciutto is known for their premium preparation and process. Curious to know what it's all about? Come with us today as we explore the whole process of prosciutto making. This process is composed of 10 steps. First step, reception and selection. In this phase, workers at the company carefully select fresh hind legs. They make sure that each of the legs they pick are compliant to their criteria of a premium meat. It should be fresh and high quality to ensure a high quality finished product too. Once a hind leg is selected, they are left at a temperature of 0 degrees Celsius, plus 3 degrees Celsius before starting the whole prosciutto process. This is done to tone the meat and make sure its temperature is equal and right. After that, each thigh will be trimmed to follow the traditional form of the San Daniele. This includes removing the fat and rinds. The workers will then proceed to weigh each of the thighs and hang them in frames. Their arrangement will be based on their weight to make sure that there is a targeted processing. Second step, salting. When the previous step has been done and certain conditions of the meat are met, the workers will begin to cover each of the thighs with sea salt. They have to make sure that both the exposed inner side and the rind are covered with salt. As you can see, the massaging of salt is done by hand to ensure that each point is covered and no parts are skipped. This company still follows a traditional way of making prosciutto, so they allow the salt to sit for a few days. In this method, the number of days they will leave the salt should be equal to the number of kilograms of weight of the thighs. After some time, the workers will check in on the meat and massage in more salt. By doing this, they can make sure that the salt penetrates even the muscle fibers of the meat, and it will stay there even after the first few steps. The prosciutto progressively absorbs salt and releases part of its moisture over the entire process. Step 3. Pressing. After the prescribed number of days of letting the salt sit, the thighs will be up for desalting. Residual salt will be removed and the meat will be placed on horizontal shelves. After placing everything, they will form a homogeneous pile. This company specifically does this to make sure that the pressing of the muscular masses is done in a uniform and consistent way. This also allows them to opt for an optimal consistency for the subsequent curing phase. Step 4. Grooming. Just like other things, prosciutto making takes quite some time because it involves a lot of resting. After the pressing stage, the thighs have to remain in a series of cells for another 90 to 150 days. This is to ensure that they rest before even going to the next step. During this phase, the workers monitor the meat and make sure that it slowly dries out. They also make sure that the surface is not excessively dehydrated to maintain its high quality. In this step, the ancetta or the emerging part of the bone is also cut down with a hacksaw. To avoid any unnecessary residue, the excess meat on the hacksaw is also cleaned with the help of a knife. This company is also very keen on keeping the meat clean. This is why they avoid the grooves on the meat so no stagnation of water or proliferation of bacteria can happen. After this, you can immediately notice how better the shape of the ham is. Step 5. Washing. After about 4 months of initial introduction, the hams need to go through washing. To remove impurities and residual salt without inducing unnecessary damage to the meat, they use water under light pressure. Then, they transfer the meat inside a drying cell. The ham has to stay here for about 2 weeks so that it can finally reach the prematuring stage. Step 6. Larding. By definition, larding is a technique for adding strips of fat into a joint of lean meat to keep it wet and juicy during cooking. When meat is larded, strips of flesh are woven into the meat. When the meat cooks, the fat melts from the inside, keeping the meat juicy. After 7 months, these batches of meat will undergo larding. This company does it manually with a mixture of pork fat and salt. The goal of this step is to soften the superficial muscular layers. In doing this, it prevents the external muscle layers from drying out as quickly as the internal ones, and it also facilitates a progressive loss of moisture. The hams are then placed in the pre-aging chambers, where the temperature rises slightly to get the product ready for the protracted aging process. Step 7. Plastering. In the 10th month mark of the production, the process of plastering is done. Just like the other steps, this is done manually too with a mixture of pork fat, salt, pepper, and rice flour. The goal of this step is to make sure that the part of the ham not covered by the rind will still remain soft after all the processes. During this step, the hams are still stored in the aging rooms and will be stored there for another period of time. The area of this company also allows them to take advantage of the natural winds so the hams can continue the maturation process until the final shipment. Step 8. Quality check. Of course, the whole process is not complete without performing any quality checks. For this company, they still use an ancient and typical gesture of an olfactory evaluation of the ham called planting. To do this, they insert a horse shank bone in 5 points of the ham. They do not have to necessarily push the bone down into the meat, but it has to be pushed at least 2 centimeters deep. The quality checker needs to sniff the bone quickly and take note of its aroma. They use a horse shank bone because it has a certain porosity that allows the retainment of the scent of the muscular mass. They also make sure to survey the 5 important points of the ham because this is where the possible residual blood could ferment. Only the thighs with the proper scent pass through this stage and proceed to the branding. Step 9. Branding. The INEQ, a certification institute, conducts the last inspections at the 13th month after the initial introduction, and then approves the application of the San Daniele trademark. After receiving the final branding, the hams are preserved in rooms that were especially built in the center of the San Daniele Hill, in a setting that adds to the value of the Alberti ham. Step 10. Shipping. The whole prosciutto making ends in shipping, where each of the ham is packaged for sale and sent to the customers. That's it for today's video. You can leave any of your questions, suggestions, or reactions in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can get notified whenever a new video is up. Thank you for watching.